In the autumn of 1969, 5 medical students from the University of Louisville embarked on what they thought would be an educational exploration of the abandoned Waverly Hills Sanatorium. Their curiosity about the facility's medical history and equipment led them into a horrifying encounter that would change their lives forever. What began as an innocent academic pursuit quickly descended into a nightmare when the group stumbled upon a seemingly fresh corpse in the old autopsy room. The events that followed would test their sanity, their medical knowledge, and their very survival instincts. The account below is taken from the personal journal of John Mercer, one of the students involved in the incident. It was discovered among his belongings after his mysterious disappearance in 1972, 3 years after the events at Waverly Hills. But first, a quick little reminder that if you are having trouble sleeping, I do recommend you check out the links in the description. They are affiliate links, so I do get a small commission from every purchase to support the channel. Thank you. Back to the story. John Mercer's journal entry, October 15th, 1969. I can't believe what happened tonight. My hands are still shaking as I write this, but I need to get it all down while it's fresh in my mind. Maybe putting it on paper will help me make sense of it all, though I doubt anything could ever truly explain what we experienced at Waverly Hills. It was supposed to be a simple exploration. Sarah, Michael, Lisa, David and I, all of us second-year med students at UL, decided to check out the old sanatorium. We'd heard so many stories about the place, both its medical history and the ghost tales. As future doctors, we were more interested in the former, curious about the antiquated equipment and treatment methods used during the tuberculosis epidemic. We arrived just after sunset. I parked my Chevy Impala off the main road, hidden from view. The air was crisp and a light fog was rolling in, giving the whole scene an eerie quality. Sarah was nervous from the start, always the cautious one in our group. "Are we sure about this?" she asked as we approached the building. I reassured her, trying to sound more confident than I felt. We entered through a broken window on the ground floor. The interior was a mess, peeling paint, broken furniture, and years of neglect evident everywhere. The silence was oppressive, broken only by our footsteps and the occasional creak of the old building settling. For the first hour or so, it was actually quite interesting from a medical perspective. We found old patient rooms, a dilapidated nurse's station, and even some rusted medical instruments. Michael was particularly excited about an old iron lung we discovered in one of the treatment rooms. We snapped some Polaroids and jotted down notes, feeling like real researchers. Then we found the autopsy room. That's where everything changed. The room was in the basement, colder than the rest of the building. Our flashlights revealed tiled walls and a large stainless steel table in the center, and on that table was a body. At first, we thought it was a mannequin or some kind of prop left behind, but as we got closer, the horrifying truth became clear. It was a real corpse, and it looked fresh. "This can't be real," Lisa whispered. "No one's supposed to be here." David, always the most level-headed of us, stepped forward to examine the body. "It's real," he confirmed, his medical training kicking in. "Male, probably in his 40s. No obvious cause of death." We were all stunned, trying to process what we were seeing. That's when I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The body's chest moved slightly as if taking a shallow breath. "Guys," I said, my voice barely audible. "I think he's alive." Before anyone could respond, the corpse's eyes snapped open. The body, the man, sat up with unnatural speed and grabbed David's arm. David screamed and tried to pull away. The rest of us were frozen in shock for a moment before springing into action. Michael and I rushed forward to help David while Sarah and Lisa backed away, screaming. The man's grip was incredibly strong, and his skin felt ice cold. As we struggled, I noticed something terrifying. Where the man's fingers gripped David's arm, a dark, mottled discoloration was spreading rapidly. We finally managed to break David free, and we all ran. The sound of bare feet slapping against tile told us the man was following us. We ran as fast as we could through the dark corridors. I could hear David's labored breathing behind me. He was clearly in pain. Somehow, we made it back to the window we'd entered through. Michael and I helped the others out before scrambling through ourselves. We ran to my car, piled in, and I drove away as fast as I could. As we sped down the hill, I glanced in the rearview mirror. A figure stood at the edge of the woods, watching us leave. I swear it raised its hand, as if waving goodbye. We drove straight to the emergency room at Louisville General Hospital. David's condition was worsening rapidly by the minute. The discoloration had spread up his arm and he was running a high fever. The doctors were baffled by his symptoms and immediately put him into isolation. The rest of us were examined, but aside from some cuts and bruises from our frantic escape, we seemed fine. The police were called and we spent hours being questioned. They were skeptical of our story, clearly thinking we were either playing a prank or had stumbled onto a crime scene while high or drunk. A team was sent to Waverly Hills, but they found nothing. No body, no signs of our struggle in the autopsy room. The only evidence of our presence was the broken window we'd entered through, and a few footprints in the dust. October 18th, 1969. It's been 3 days now. David is still in the hospital, his condition worsening. The infection, or whatever it is, has spread to most of his body. The doctors are at a loss, never having seen anything like it. The rest of us have been released, but we're all struggling to cope with what happened. Sarah hasn't stopped crying since that night. Michael throws himself into his studies, barely sleeping, as if the medical textbooks hold some answer to what we encountered. Lisa has withdrawn completely, not answering her phone or door when we try to check on her. As for me, I can't shake the feeling that this isn't over. Every time I close my eyes, I see that corpse sitting up, its cold hand reaching out, and sometimes, when I'm alone, I swear I can hear the sound of bare feet on tile getting closer. October 20th, 1969. It's been almost a week since that night at Waverly Hills, and things are only getting worse. David's condition continues to deteriorate. The infection has spread to his entire body now, and the doctors are completely baffled. They've run every test imaginable, consulted specialists from across the country, but no one can explain what's happening to him. I visited him yesterday. It was horrifying. His skin has taken on a greyish hue mottled with dark patches like bruises. His eyes are sunken and glassy, and he's lost so much weight he's barely recognizable. The worst part is, he's still conscious, still aware of what's happening to him. He looked at me with such fear and desperation, it broke my heart. "John," he whispered, "what's happening to me?" I couldn't answer him. How could I? We don't understand what we encountered that night, let alone how to fight it. I just held his hand through the protective gloves I had to wear and tried to offer some comfort. The police have closed their investigation. Without any evidence to support our story, they've written it off as a prank gone wrong. They think we're covering up for some kind of accident, that David's condition is the result of a drug overdose, or exposure to some toxic substance we encountered while trespassing. If only it were that simple. I can't shake the feeling that we're being watched. Sometimes, out of the corner of my eye, I think I see a figure standing in the shadows. But when I turn to look, there's nothing there. Am I losing my mind? Or did we bring something back with us from Waverly Hills? October 25th, 1969. Things are getting worse. David. God, I don't even know how to describe it. His condition has progressed beyond anything the doctors have ever seen. His skin is almost completely black now, hard and cracked like old leather. He's lost all ability to speak, communicating only through pained moans and desperate looks. The hospital has him in complete isolation now. Only the doctors and nurses in full protective gear are allowed in his room. They're afraid whatever he has might be contagious, though none of the rest of us have shown any symptoms. Michael thinks he might be onto something. He's been researching obscure medical texts looking into old tuberculosis treatments used at Waverly Hills. He's got some wild theories about experimental procedures and their long-term effects on the human body. I want to believe him, want to think there's a rational explanation for all of this. But deep down, I know what we encountered that night was anything but rational. Lisa finally returned my calls today. She sounded off, distant, distracted. She says she's been having nightmares about that night, about the man on the autopsy table. In her dreams, she says, he follows her, always just a step behind, his cold hand reaching for her. I didn't have the heart to tell her I've been having the same dreams. Sarah's parents called. They're taking her to see a psychiatrist. Apparently she's been having panic attacks, unable to sleep without sedatives. She keeps talking about the man from the basement coming for her. As for me, I'm starting to question everything. My memories of that night seem to shift and change every time I think about them. Was the man's skin really that pale? Were his eyes actually open when he grabbed David? The details blur and distort like a fading photograph. I've started keeping a small notebook with me at all times, jotting down every detail I can remember about that night. I'm afraid if I don't, the truth will slip away entirely, replaced by something my mind has conjured up to protect itself. The worst part is the waiting to see if David will recover, waiting to see if the rest of us will start showing symptoms, waiting to see if that thing from Waverly Hills will come for us. The uncertainty is maddening. I've caught myself checking my skin obsessively for any signs of discoloration, jumping at every unexpected sound. Is this paranoia or justified caution? I don't know anymore. October the 30th, 1969. David died last night. The doctors say his system just shut down, unable to cope with whatever was ravaging his body. But I saw him in those final moments. It wasn't his body giving up. It was something else taking over. I snuck into the hospital after visiting hours. I know it was stupid, dangerous even, but I had to see him one last time. The night nurse recognized me, knew I was his friend, and let me in after I begged. She gave me a protective suit to wear and left me alone with him. God, I wish I hadn't gone in there. His body was barely recognizable as human anymore. His skin was completely black, cracked and oozing a foul-smelling liquid. His eyes were open, but they weren't his anymore. They were cloudy, like a corpse's, but there was something moving behind them, something aware. As I stood there, frozen in horror, His head turned towards me, those dead eyes focused on me, and his mouth opened. What came out wasn't a sound any human throat could make. It was a low, rattling hiss, like air escaping from a long-sealed tomb. I ran. I tore off the protective gear and ran out of the hospital as fast as I could. I didn't stop until I reached my apartment, locking the door behind me and collapsing on the floor, shaking uncontrollably. The hospital called this morning to inform me of David's passing. They said it happened peacefully in his sleep. I didn't tell them what I saw. How could I? They'd think I was crazy. Maybe I am. The rest of us are falling apart. Michael's obsession has reached new heights. He barely sleeps or eats, spending all his time researching and formulating theories. He's talking about going back to Waverly Hills to find proof of what happened. I tried to talk him out of it, but he won't listen. Lisa's disappeared. Her roommate called, worried. Apparently, Lisa packed a bag and left 3 days ago, saying she needed to end this where it began. I've got a sickening feeling I know where she's gone. Sarah's been committed to a psychiatric facility. Her parents called to let me know. The doctors are saying it's a mental breakdown brought on by stress and trauma. If only they knew the truth. And me? I don't know how much longer I can go on like this. The nightmares are getting worse. I see David's transformed body, hear that inhuman hiss. But now, in my dreams, he's not alone. The man from the autopsy table is with him, and they're both coming for me. I've started sleeping with the lights on, a kitchen knife by my bed. It's not much, but it makes me feel a little safer. Not that I think any weapon could stop what's coming for us, because something is coming. I can feel it. Whatever we encountered at Waverly Hills, whatever took David, it's not finished with us yet. November 5th, 1969. It's been 3 weeks since that night at Waverly Hills, and our lives have become a waking nightmare. Michael's gone missing. He left a frantic voicemail on my phone 2 days ago, saying he'd discovered something big, something that explained everything. He was on his way to Waverly Hills to confirm his findings. I haven't heard from him since. I called the police, but they're not taking it seriously. They think he's just another college kid who's taken off on a bender. They don't understand the danger he's in. None of them do. I've tried going to the authorities, to anyone who will listen, to warn them about what's happening, but without proof, without evidence, I just sound like a raving lunatic. Maybe I am. Maybe this is all some kind of shared delusion, a mass hysteria or something. But deep down, I know that's not true. What we saw, what we experienced, was all too real. The nightmares have gotten worse. Now it's not just David and the man from the autopsy table. I see Sarah, Lisa, and Michael too. All of them changed, transformed into something inhuman. They call to me in my dreams, begging me to join them, to become part of whatever they've become. I've started hallucinating even when I'm awake. Sometimes, out of the corner of my eye, I'll see a figure standing in the shadows, watching me. When I turn to look, it's gone, but I can feel its presence lingering, waiting. I've barricaded myself in my apartment. I've missed classes, ignored calls from my family and friends. I can't risk going outside. Can't risk exposing anyone else to whatever this is. But I know I can't hide forever. Sooner or later, it will find me. I've been researching Waverly Hills history, trying to find some clue, some explanation for what we encountered. The more I dig, the more disturbing things I uncover. There are stories of experimental treatments, of patients disappearing without explanation, of staff members going mad. But it's all rumors and hearsay. nothing concrete. One thing keeps coming up in my research though, the body chute. It was a tunnel used to remove the bodies of deceased patients discreetly, to avoid lowering morale among the living. Something about it nags at me, like a half-remembered dream. Was that where we found the body? My memories of that night have become so distorted I can't be sure anymore. I'm writing all of this down in the hope that if something happens to me, someone will find this journal and understand. Maybe they can prevent others from making the same mistake we did. Maybe they can stop whatever was awakened in that place. If you're reading this, please stay away from Waverly Hills. Some things should remain buried in the past. November 10th, 1969. I think this will be my last entry. I can't take it anymore. The constant fear, the hallucinations, the knowledge of what's coming for me, it's too much to bear. Last night, I saw them. All of them. David, Lisa, Sarah, Michael, and the man from the autopsy table. They were standing outside my apartment building, looking up at my window. Their skin was that same mottled black as David's. The following pages were found loose in the back of John Mercer's journal, dated October 1st, 1972. The handwriting is noticeably different from the previous entries, more hurried and erratic. October 1st, 1972. I've made a terrible mistake. I thought going back to Waverly Hills would end this nightmare, but I've only made it worse. So much worse. I arrived at the sanatorium just after midnight. The place looked exactly the same as it did 3 years ago, like time had stopped the moment we fled. I entered through the same broken window. The hallways seemed to stretch endlessly, and I could have sworn I heard whispers echoing from the empty rooms. I made my way to the basement, to that damned autopsy room where it all began. The room was empty. The steel table bare and rusted, but as I stood there, memories flooding back, I felt a chill run down my spine. I turned around, and there he was, the corpse, the man, or whatever he is. He looked exactly the same, his skin pale and mottled, eyes sunken but alert. He smiled at me, a horrifying sight, and spoke in a raspy voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Welcome back, Doctor. We've been waiting for you." I ran. God help me, I ran as fast as I could. Somehow I made it out. I don't remember how I got home, but here I am, writing this. But I know now that I didn't escape. I've brought it with me. As I write this, I can hear something moving in my apartment. The air feels heavy, charged with a dark energy. I don't have much time left. To whoever finds this, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for what we unleashed that night. I'm sorry for going back and making it worse. If you're reading this, it means I'm already gone. But maybe, just maybe, by writing this down, I can warn others. I hear footsteps outside my door. They've found me. God help us all. The journal ends here. The fate of John Mercer remains unknown. In the years following the disappearance of John Mercer, strange occurrences have been reported in and around Louisville. People have gone missing after visiting Waverly Hills Sanatorium, only to reappear days or weeks later with no memory of where they've been. Others report seeing a group of 5 young people dressed in 1960s clothing wandering the halls of the abandoned building. The medical community has been baffled by a series of unusual infections appearing in the area, characterized by a mottled discoloration of the skin and resistance to all known treatments. Some whisper that these cases are somehow connected to the events of 1969, but no concrete evidence has ever been found. Waverly Hills Sanatorium still stands, a silent sentinel holding its secrets. Ghost tours and paranormal investigations continue, but those who know the true story warn visitors to be cautious. For in the depths of those decaying halls something waits, patient, relentless, and hungry for new victims.